We've put down 3 thin early layers to sort of get the roadmap of where we're going to be putting colors and light and dark in here. Made a value study, which I'll be referring to, and I will have my photograph where I can see it while I'm working. And so let's go ahead and get started here. I'm going to start at the back in this far distance back here, and I've got some little hills, mountains back there. I'm going to start by putting those guys in, and when I do, they're going to start bringing some other things out. So I have a pink, we had started with pink, yellow, and blue. I'm going to mix this pink with my blue, get a purple going here. Yeah, that looks pretty good. And so start right back here. Since there's already a little bit of red here, that feels like it needs to go a little bluer than what I just did. Yeah, that's going to be better. And then it'll define the top of that bridge there. Mark it, don't lean in too far or your head is in the way. Trying to see my details in there. And then I'm going to have dark trees that cover through most of this. And so I can just sort of do an uneven stop on that, but I want to find the top of that bridge. And I'm going to put dark in on top of this, so I'm going to just go ahead and bring that purple right in across through there. It won't matter, those trees are going to go right in on top of it. And then there's a bit more purple mountain visible down in here somewhere. Okay, so that can sort of sit, and no, the mountain doesn't show, that's trees that show in underneath of there. So I don't have to worry about putting that purple in underneath of this area, although one little place that purple can go is the shadow side of this bridge abutment and a shadow side of that bridge abutment. And I could go ahead and do that purple for these. Yeah, it sort of goes all the way across through there. And then it's going to turn into trees when it gets down in here further. And it's going to be trees up in here. That actually, go a little more of that, okay. Now the trees are sort of a green black, so let me pull a little bit of sap green in here, and I'm going to make that darker by adding ultramarine blue to it. And a little bit of burnt sienna to be the opposite color without graying it too much. If I add red to it, it's going to gray it down quite a bit. I just want this to be a dark, neutral blue-green. And let's just pick up a little bit more of a more yellowy color that is going to come in on the trees down in here further. And I can go even a little more yellow with that. So that we can have some light coming across these trees. And yeah, there's some pieces of it down in here too. I'm doing uneven edges on this so that as I paint, it'll look like the trees, and it doesn't matter if I get it's only visible up in the top part of it, but if I have too hard of a line, it'll show later. Just wanting this to sort of feel like those trees in there. Okay, now we're going to get that darker green. Let me come back over into here. So underneath of this bridge and just down to that water line right there. No, is that too dark? Almost, isn't it? Almost too dark. Okay, let's just, I can make it lighter by just picking a little bit of it off. And then that's saying if that's that dark, then these shadows need to be a little darker. And for these ones, it's dark to about there. And then as we get into the back end of that bridge, it's dark underneath of this bridge. Trees are coming in across, and maybe some yellow with these trees. These trees feel like they're a little bit lighter, so I'm picking up a little bit more of that yellowy green to throw into this part of it. And then this comes down right to that bridge. And maybe there's some more trees that show here. Okay. That's going to go right to the edge of that bridge. You know, this is a painting that one could get really fussy with, and I'm not sure how fussy I want to get with it, but I do want to keep in mind that it's not as dark back here as it will be in the foreground. It's still pretty dark, but not quite as dark. So I'm working with a number 6 brush, so this is fairly small because it's a lot of little detail stuff. And I'm trying to keep this horizon straight in here. Darkest on the side away from the sun. The sun's coming that direction, so it's going to be dark on that side. Just sort of plopping down little brush marks that look like tree bits. Doesn't have to be anything too fancy. Come right over some of that. Still keeping this thinking sort of tree shape as I go. And there might be some sky holes in some of these trees. And just letting that be interesting, and it's sort of slightly different shapes, some of them a little bigger, some of them more round. All the way to the edge there. So this horizon needs to be quite straight because that far away you're going to have a dark horizon, or I mean a straight horizon. If it's closer, then you can see some little ins and outs, but you're not going to that far away. And that's feeling too light there. I guess I'm going to have to put just a little bit of blue gold. Let's, that goldy light. Let these guys be just a wee touch darker. And the bridge, maybe even the bridge. Still want it lighter than what I was painting, but okay, that looks good. And okay. Leave that alone. Okay, working my way in here. Now this tree, what color are we going to be doing him? I'm seeing once again that goldy green, but Let's add a little bit of quinacridone gold to my mixture. Quinacridone gold. And then we'll still have this dark green for the darker side of that. And add a little more ultramarine blue to it. Okay. So I'm going to start with the lightest color. And I'm thinking the shape of those fronds as I do this. So I'm thinking that they sort of come down and some of them go upwards and they curve a little bit. So I'm putting this light color in first, and then we'll come and do a dark color in on top of that. And this almost feels like it needs to come a little browner. There's a dark side on this trunk, but I can get that in later. So I added a little bit of burnt sienna and red into that mixture. Now this feels like that needs to, there we go, that looks better. Okay, it's got to dry before I can put the dark pieces in. And now we're going to have a similar color, and I need to go to a little bit bigger brush now as we're working into bigger areas. And I'm wanting to add a little bit of red. Yeah, quinacridone gold. I like that quinacridone gold. Quinacridone gold is a brownie gold, a brownie yellow. And once again, I'm going to come back in and I'm going to put some other colors in on top of this. So I can actually paint two sections of this at the same time. And there's some tree trunks that I'm seeing coming up in there that I might want to keep some of that light for. So I'm just looking at that a little bit as I put this in place. There's also some other things there that I don't really care about. And then as I come into my figure, I need to be very careful how I paint. So I'm just painting the lightest color, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to paint on top of this with a darker color so that I'll be doing it like we did the washes, where we're doing it sort of in layers to build it up. Now I could, and actually maybe this is a good time to do that, I could do a little bit more greenish color in there, and let's just pull some in and find out what happens. Oh yeah, this is actually going to be nice. When it's still wet like this, you get these really lovely little blends that happen. And so the paint sort of pushes each other away, and you get soft, and you get sort of soft edges between things, but you get some really sweet little blends. And that's that area. And then in here we have some more under the and around the figure that turns a little more greenish. Let's see if this is dry enough that I can come in and do, and that needs to even be a little darker up on that tree. So sunny side, dark side. Not trying to get every detail of this, I just want to get the feeling of the those fronds. So, you know, what direction do they go? Do they curve a little bit when they get to the end? If I press my brush down a little bit, I can get a fat line and then lift it and get a skinny line. And then it's a little darker all along that edge. And then let's come in with that darker, a little bit darker, and get some of this a little darker. If I get this a little darker, then that figure is going to stand out a little more there. And there's a tree here. Just be gentle and maybe some little spots in here to make this tree sound looking, and then that feeling of grass coming up in there. Just want to be so not detailed up in here, but detail in a way that talks about this. So if I bring that dark over there further, then that really shows that there's a separate row of things. Okay. And now let's go ahead and work this gold down through this area. And as it comes out onto this beach, I'm seeing is it turning more of a reddish brown. And then there's some green that's coming and mixing in there. So we can shift to the green again. And this green, I'm mixing sap green with a little bit of ultramarine blue, and then to lighten it up, we're adding some of that yellow. I don't want to get too dark up in here, so I'm thinning this out. And the quinacridone rose with a little bit of burnt sienna added to it. That needs more yellow in there. It's fun to sort of play some of these colors back and forth as we work our way through here. And I'm just sort of stopping where there's a natural stop in some of the texture. And I'm doing a little bit of dry brush to make it look like those rocks. And then as we get closer to the beach over on this side, I actually should be adding a little bit of blue to this. And when we do the blue, is that too much blue? Blue with burnt sienna. I think we're going to come back and work on some of this later. That might not mix as well as I like. Although I am liking a little bit of what's going on there. Plain wet and just letting it do what it's going to do without pushing it too much. You can get some pretty interesting, this little feed of that dark coming up into there is actually pretty interesting. Okay, now my red brown. So the red brown was working all the way down through this section here. But I'm adding some yellow to it every so often to brighten it up a little bit. And then as it comes to where this grass is going to be, I need to, or actually it's ice plant, I need to think about the shape of that ice plant and just paint, coming down and sort of painting this edge of the ice plant by finding what it looks like on the edge. And there's some rocks that are going to be out in here. We're going to come in with a blue wash on that water, and when I do, I'll bring it up and over this to get some of these really dark areas. Right now, I'm wanting to just keep some lights, which let's not get too dark over in there. But as you can see, this is now looking pretty light, where we were probably afraid it wasn't going to before this. So that's the edge of that grass. All right. And as long as I sort of stop with uneven or find the edge of something that's hard, it will make a really pretty blend. Now we're looking at this grass area up in here, and I need some more of the yellow. So I'm working with quinacridone gold. If you don't have that, New Gamboge is probably going to work just fine. So now I'm looking at mixing a little bit of green in there. Is that going to work nice? Get a little more sap green in there. Oh, that is a pretty color. It is a pretty color. That's going to be down in here. And I'm putting on just a layer of color to start with, and then we will shift that with some marks to make the darker areas in there. I suppose we can leave a few lighter spots. Leaving that hand out because it's going to be a different color. And I'm now coming back in and just doing a little bit of lifting for some of those lighter areas. Hopefully this leaves it sort of uneven there. Oh, and I need to finish with this color all the way across while I've still got it. Finding the actual edge of that figure. You don't want to paint away from it. You want to actually paint that figure. And now just a little lifting with my brush. Get some of that uneven feel to it. And then after it's drying some, let's just see if this is going to work. I'm just touching this. This is still damp. I'm hoping this is going to work. Trying to sort of follow the feeling of there's going to be that shadow that runs down through there too. So let's just go ahead and let that guy work through and be some of that. And then there's just a feeling of some of the, I'm just wondering if my sponge would do a better job. Careful about overdoing it. Yeah, I think that's going to work. So I'm just doing this in sections, just little pieces of this. And while we've got that beautiful green going, quinacridone gold and sap green. And just so that I can be sure that I'm not giving you guys false information, let me try mixing a little bit of the New Gamboge, which is on the main list for you. So you're more likely to have it. Add that with my sap green. And I think what I'm going to have to do is add, yeah, I've got to add a little bit of burnt sienna to it to get the same color that I get with the quinacridone gold. So let me add a little burnt sienna in there. Yeah, that gets almost the same color. Very, very close, and maybe a little more yellow in that mixture. Yeah, those are, it's very similar to the same color. Just show you here, I'll just shift over to this other one in here. Just adding a little New Gamboge in there. So some of the color from underneath is coming up through this, and if I don't put it down real thick, I'm going to just shift back to my second one. And we were supposed to get a little more blue as we worked our way down into here, so I'm going to add a little bit of blue into this. And don't want it that dark. We still have to keep a lot more light. Some pretty colors here. It's pretty thin, so I put a little bit down, and then it was like, that's way too dark. So I just added water to my pile, and now I can bring this and pull it up and over some of this other. We're going to have darks coming in here too, so this whole patch can be the same color. So I'm painting with two different greens here and just sort of painting them side by side, the more yellow green and then that bluer green, so that we can get the feeling of both in here. So notice that I'm just thinking of shapes. I'm just thinking of a shape of color here. I'm not trying to get any individual things of grass, except for I'm getting the tops of these showing. And I have to be careful about getting too dark up in here. We really want to keep this pretty light, but I want that color in there. So and then I can lift a little bit of that off. And same with right down through here. That's going to be a little lighter. Just the grasses sort of work across there, so let's just lift them that way. And darks are going to go in on top of this, so I can just paint this whole area. Now, am I going to be sorry? What I could do, if I think I'm going to be a little bit sorry about how light or dark this is I can come in with my rag right now and go ahead and press out some of this and I can press out some of that. Get it a little closer to that original color that I had down in there. And just sort of soften the edge of that. That doesn't look like I need to go all the way back to my original white. I thought I did, but you know, when we get those darks in here, this is all going to look much darker. Okay. So have I got most of my greens in? Looks like it. Now I can start coming in with some of the more of the orangey browns. So burnt sienna and quinacridone rose, but it's going to go more purple when we get down into here. And that needs some yellow added to it. So let's go ahead and put that new gamboge in there. A little more, needs a little blue. Just a touch of blue in there. That much blue. A little more red. Okay, I think that's going to work. I can add yellow to it. Okay. And I'm going to dry brush in here to get some of that feeling of those rocks. This pathway. And as it comes, yeah, that needs more of the yellow. We're going to have a dark shadow up there, so that little bit of dark that I got in there is not going to be too much of a problem. There's a little bit of a log right there. Okay. Let's see, this is actually shadow. I have a feeling that I probably should be stopping sometime here. I'm starting to lose my concentration. I was wanting to get most of the sort of first color down. We're getting close to it. And where my lightest lights are going to be, not to lose them. I might have already lost some of it. This log, we've got to paint around that log. And then that pulls up into that green a little bit, pulls up into that green a little bit. There we go. Find the edge of that log. That log's going to have some dark side to it as well, but this way I can at least see what's happening with it. As I come back and rework it, there's going to be shadow that works through a lot of this. And we're now at the point where I should go even bigger on the brush. And we're going to have darker, and I'm going to have some purple that comes into here. but I want this to still have some lights showing. So once again, I'm dry brushing through here. So some of this can stay with some little light bits. Because we're allowing, you know, as we come up into the foreground, we're going to have more light. And so leaving some of these little bits to shine through is going to be helpful. But also notice how even though I'm putting down basically the same color of brown through this whole thing, those colors that we had underneath are showing through and changing how this looks. This side of this log can go ahead and get some color on it. Okay, and then I need to mix up a little bit more of that brown. It had burnt sienna, quinacridone rose, some new gamboge, and ultramarine blue. Not too much ultramarine blue. A little more yellow. Let's put some of that Quin Gold in it. It's gonna turn more bluish purple down in there. I've got to be careful that I don't get too much yellow into that area. Maybe I don't. Let's just mix another batch over here. But I wanted to go a little more into purple in that area. So let me just, okay. So I'm scumbling some of this across through here. Hope my husband mowing the lawn isn't making too much noise in the background. And then I want to scumble some of this purple. Oh, and a little more blue to it. Yeah, just a little more blue in there. This is one of my darker colors. It's going to be part of this, and maybe I shouldn't be doing this at all yet. Can't stop with it like that. It's got to stop and have some natural little bends to it. Missy Puss, what are you going to get into? Don't be knocking all my stuff over, okay? I have an Exploro cat thinking she's going to climb up my stacks of stuff. I think we're about at the point where I must. Okay, we'll put a little more of this purpley stuff in here. It's also going to give me some feeling for how that light and dark is going to work in there. And okay. I think I'm at the point here where I just really should stop. Shadow. This is going to be darker on this side of this. Okay, I need to stop. We're going to be working some more of these kind of colors into those shadow areas, but I don't want to do that right now. I'm losing my concentration, and losing my concentration means that I'm not going to be doing it right. I'm going to end up going too fast without paying attention to what I'm doing and create problems. So let's stop right here. I feel like we've gotten some nice color blends in there. That feeling of the yellowy green is working. There'll be some more bits and pieces that I need to put in there to make that all work. Yeah, because there will be, you know, in here we need to get some more sort of darks, creating some shapes in there. And feeling some shadows running over into there. Yeah, so stop, Margaret. I always have this feeling I want to keep painting, keep painting, keep painting. But if you do that when you're feeling a little bit tired or your concentration is going, then it's time to stop. So this is time for me to stop. This is the point that I really wanted to get to with you today on this, so that we could see what the base colors are going to be before we get the real darks put in here. So we're going to have even more darks coming into this building and finding the spaces of how that dark is going to work through here. So you get this sort of mid-tone part of the painting where you're not sure that, you know, this back here feels pretty finished, but this is definitely not finished. It's coming together though. It's got some very interesting parts to it. So stop, Margaret, stop.